نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Respected sisters and participants, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. It is with the grace of Allah Almighty and through the wasila of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that we have joined here today in this online webinar in remembrance of the Ahlul Bayt and in particular of Sayyida Zainab salamullah alayha, who we know to be the blessed granddaughter of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the blessed daughter of Sayyidina Imam Ali karamallahu wajhul kareem, and Sayyida Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha, and of course the blessed sister of Sayyidina Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba and Sayyidina Imam Hussein alayhi salam. I'm honoured to be speaking at today's webinar, and for this I would like to congratulate Minhaj Sisters UK for organising this event for us today. I want to thank and congratulate the President of Minhaj Sisters, Sister Ansa Hussein, the General Secretary, Sister Fatima Siddiqui, the Vice President, Sister Ifra Khalid, as well as the rest of the team, including Sister Basma Ali, Sister Fatima Khan, Sister Suwaiba Majid Khan, Sister Aisha Ahmed, Sister Haneen Fatima, Sister Hijab Zahra, Sister Atika Parveen, and Brother Huzaifa for all of their contribution. I also want to take the time to acknowledge the MSM sisters who are joining us from Pakistan. They are also participating in today's webinar, so thank you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you all immensely for your tireless effort and for your hard work in bringing this event to us today in the month of Muharram, which I hope will be of benefit for us all, inshallah. So the topic of today's webinar is centered on the question of how we can remain steadfast on the deen in the face of the modern challenges that we are experiencing today. Now, when looking at the current state of affairs of our Muslim world, we are facing both an internal decline in our religious values, morals, and practices, as well as external challenges to our religion. In the time of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, the biggest threat to the Islamic Empire and to the Muslims was the height of Yazid's political corruption and his monetary corruption within the state, as well as the moral decline that Yazid had instigated through his own personal and public disregard for the principles and ahkam of the Quran and Sunnah. Today, our Muslim Ummah faces similar challenges, just as every era of Muslims have done since the time of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, in light of the month of Muharram and the occasion of the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, I want to just briefly give an overview of some of the ordeals and some of the trials that the generations of Muslims before us had endured. And what I ultimately want to convey is that our faith, our Iman, and this great religion has always and will continue to face opposition from many avenues, which will come in many shapes and forms. There will always be continued attempts to weaken the pillars of our faith and attack our Iman. Yet it is the way in which we face these challenges and respond to these problems that will ultimately define our future and destiny. And this future is dependent upon us never forgetting our history and the sacrifices that were made on our behalf to ensure that the legacy of Islam would continue. So if we wish to face the challenges of modernity and all that it entails, we must first seek to understand our past, to appreciate and to learn the lessons from the trials and tribulations that our great Muslim predecessors faced, so that we are equipped to deal with the future and all that it holds. The second half of my talk will of course touch on the life and actions of Sayyida Zainab, salamullah alayha, and I will then discuss the important role that she played in defending the values of Islam, in defending its leadership, and how she serves as a timeless example for men and women of all ages. So looking at the era of Yazid, it is very well known that the basic tenets of Islam, the foundations of Islamic teachings, were grossly overlooked, and the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet ﷺ was outrightly rejected. And instead, there was widespread indecency, disbelief, and immorality in the politics and in the culture of Yazid's rule. This is in fact a reality that the Holy Prophet ﷺ prophesied well before Yazid's time, as it is stated in a hadith narrated by Hazrat Abi Ubaidah radiallahu anhu, who states, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يزال أمر أمتي قائما بالقسط حتى يكون أول من يثلمه رجل من بني أمية يقال له يزيد. Hazrat Abi Ubaidah radiallahu anhu states that the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that my ummah will persist in the way and on the values of justice until a man will trample over my deen, until he will destroy the values of my deen, and that man is from the tribe of Bani Umayyah, يقال له Yazid, and he is called Yazid. In this hadith, the Holy Prophet ﷺ is saying that his ummah will continue to remain on the path of fairness and justice until the values of his deen will be destroyed at the hands of Yazid. In other words, Yazid will be the one who will come and disrupt the continuity of the Sunnah, and he will be the one to bring an end to the prophetic political and social system of the Islamic State. Hazur Sayyidi Shaykh al-Islam explains in one of his earlier lectures that Yazid is in fact understood to be the founder of the political, the founder of monetary and moral corruption in Islamic history. So briefly put, Yazid's coming to power ended 30 years of just and fair politics. We know the famous words of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, الخلافة في أمتي 30 سنة ثم ملك بعد ذلك. The Holy Prophet ﷺ stated that al-Khilafah, as in proper, true Islamic governance that is based purely on the principles of the Quran and Sunnah, will only be in my ummah for 30 years, and after that there will be monarchy. And Yazid's political rule was the first of many to come. Now, if we look at the time between the passing of the Holy Prophet ﷺ and the era of Yazid, Islam as a code of life and mode of being was perfectly adopted by the Khulafa'i Rashidin, the four rightly guided caliphs. During their respective eras, the state took full responsibility for the welfare of all men, women and children. It was a time where key political and legal positions of power were filled by qualified, respectable and dignified people of faith. And it was a time where Islamic etiquettes and Islamic morals and practices were readily enforced and practiced by both the state and the citizens, i.e. both the people in power and those whom they commanded were well versed in the principles of the Quran and Sunnah, and they firmly adhered to Allah Almighty's divine law. This was the political and social system that Yazid had destroyed and instead replaced with an immoral and corrupt kingdom. Yazid's rule had brought about a devastating social decline, which was a direct result of Yazid's personal neglect and disregard for Islamic teachings and rulings, his personal habits of drinking, of adultery and theft, as the so-called caliph of the time had normalized public disobedience of the Sunnah, where the lines between halal and haram were blurred, where the boundaries of the Sharia were broken, and the principles of the Quran and Sunnah relating to social etiquette, relating to the welfare of all men, women and children were overlooked. Those dignified, well-qualified and respectable men who held important and key positions in politics and in the judiciary were suspended from their duties, and Yazid had instead replaced them with not only members of his own families, but as according to the hadith of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, all the important strategic positions in government were soon to be filled with gangsters and thugs. And once Yazid was able to secure his corrupt bandits of thugs into power, and once he had acquired the wealth and fear that he desired, he was then able to strip government and the people from their basic political and human rights. This included the right to deliberate, the right to initiate a difference of opinion, and most notably, the right to protest was taken away from the public. One of the most horrendous attacks that occurred after the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam was the siege of Medina. The attack came as a result of an uprising in the holy city of Medina, which turned into sort of a social movement after the people had witnessed the height of Yazid's crimes, as well as the increase in his inhumane and irreligious behavior after Karbala. His drinking habits, adultery, theft, and all kinds of inhumane and forbidden acts had reached its peak after the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And so after having witnessed Yazid's personal decay, and after having learning of how he'd begun to exceed every limit of committing sins, the people of Medina immediately rejected his political authority. Now, considering that Medina was the city of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, and knowing that it bore great influence and significance in the Muslim world, Yazid knew that such an uprising in Medina would then spill over into the city of Mecca and the surrounding communities, and that would obviously weaken his political authority. So in response to the uprising and in response to the protests, Yazid sent an army led by Muslim bin Uqba to the city of Medina, where an unspeakable series of attacks occurred against men, women, young boys and young girls, and this came to be known as the Battle of Harra. Yazid's army entered into the city, and his orders to the soldiers were that Medina has been made halal on all of you, and you are free to plunder and loot the city for 3 days as you wish. And thus every man, every woman, young and old, was made permissible for Yazid's soldiers. The city of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, in which the descendants of the Prophet ﷺ's companions, as well as the Ansar and Muhajirin, were massacred. Their property was looted, the honor and dignity of the women and girls of Medina was violated, the streets were piled with dead bodies, children were killed in their mothers' arms, and even the elderly Sahaba of the Holy Prophet ﷺ were tortured and killed. In total, close to 10,000 people were martyred. This included 1,700 of the Ansar and Muhajirin, 700 Huffaz and great scholars, as well as the remaining dwellers of the city of Medina. And in addition to the slaughter, the adhan and prayer was forbidden in Masjid Nabawi, and instead it was made into a stable for the horses of Yazid's army. It is needless to say that Yazid had ordered one of the most gruesome attacks in Islamic history following the event of Karbala. But of course, that was not enough for Yazid. And that is what the greed for power does. It corrupts the mind and it turns ordinary bad people into bloodthirsty warlords. You see, after the siege of Medina, Hazrat Abdullah bin Zubayr radiallahu anhu, who was among the men that Yazid had attempted to receive allegiance from initially, had gathered the people of Mecca, and in a long and powerful speech, he urged the people to reject Yazid's authority, to remain steadfast on the message of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and to do justice to his martyrdom. Now, it's important to remember that this is all happening not just after Karbala, but after the siege of Medina. Hazrat Abdullah bin Zubayr was now asking the people of Mecca to lay down their lives for their religion. In asking to reject the political authority of Yazid, he was now in a way asking of the people of Mecca to sacrifice their women, to let go of their property. Because having witnessed the terrible fate of the people of Medina, who were the first to rise in opposition to Yazid, the Meccans by default were inviting the same fate onto themselves. And this of course was known to every man and woman who ultimately did reject Yazid's political authority and who became ready to fight and battle Yazid's forces when and if they came. And of course, upon hearing that the people of Mecca had officially taken Hazrat Abdullah bin Zubayr radiallahu anhu as their Khalifa and leader, Yazid sent an army of thousands to lay an attack on the holy city of Mecca Mukarramah, and this time Yazid had ordered for the Kaaba to be set on fire, and for the same degree of slaughter and torture of the people of Mecca as he did in the siege of Medina. But of course, the worst of Yazid's crimes was that he stood in opposition to Allah Azza wa Jal and his Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, as it is stated in the hadith narrated by Zayd ibn Arqam, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لعلي وفاطمة والحسن والحسين أنا حرب لمن حاربتم وسلم لمن سالمتم. The Holy Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said to Imam Ali, Sayyida Fatima to Zahra, Sayyidina Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salam, that I am at war with whoever makes war with you and peace for whoever makes peace with you. So by choosing to wage a war against the Ahlul Bayt, against the blessed children of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, against the blessed cities of Mecca and Medina, Yazid in fact chose his destiny to be among Allah Almighty's most cursed people. So these historical atrocities let us know that the threat to Islam and to our Iman has always existed and they will always remain. It is simply that the mode and forms of these threats will and have changed, but in one way or another, the threats and challenges remain. Today, the kinds of challenges that Muslims are now facing are more subtle and hidden. The problems that we face today relate to the internal flaws that our communities are facing, namely the spiritual decline, the intellectual and moral decline. There is a decline to our commitment to Islam, a decline in our knowledge of Islam, a decline in the truthfulness and piety of our characters, and most importantly, we lack clarity in our faith. We lack confidence in our faith, so much so that we are now finding it extremely difficult to defend our religion against the misconceptions and misperceptions that are running rampant, particularly in the media. For the past few decades now, the portrayal of Islam in the media and in the eyes of the Muslim and non-Muslim world has primarily been negative due to the radical actions and un-Islamic actions of a few. Islam has now been portrayed as being incompatible, unaccommodating to Western civilization, and this particular thought posits Islam in opposition to principles of Western democracy, to principles of liberal thought, to principles of equality between men and women, and principles of peace and freedom. These misconceptions have not only tarnished the image of Islam in the eyes of the non-Muslim world, but it has equally begun to detract the more vulnerable and weak minds of our Muslim youth. There is unfortunately a portion of our youth who are truly beginning to feel as though they are practicing a violent faith, a religion that oppresses women, a religion that does not respect freedom of speech, a religion that restricts one's bodily freedom, a religion that suppresses one's natural inclinations to be or become whatever one wants, a religion that does not respect the freedom of thought or one's actions. All in all, these perceptions of Islam and of Muslims have resulted in shying away our youth from the beauty of the religion. It has created a generation of scared and embarrassed young Muslims who are now finding it incredibly difficult to preserve their Islamic identities. They feel shy or they feel embarrassed to openly wear their Islamic attire. They feel vulnerable and weak when having to defend their religion or defend the values that they are taught to practice in tempting situations. All of these modern challenges and issues are, in fact, as I mentioned earlier, a result of the decline in the clarity of our faith, a result of the decline in the knowledge of Islamic doctrine, Islamic thought and philosophy, which are all tools that help one to remain steadfast, to remain strong and to remain confident whilst living in a world that is becoming more corrupt by the hour. So, correcting ourselves and bettering our inner selves, our personal flaws and struggles, is really the best way to combat the misconceptions and misrepresentation of Islam. That just by issuing statements and articles against Islamophobic policies, against the negative media portrayal of our religion alone will not diminish the forces of Islamophobia. In fact, the only way that we can weaken it is through a show of strong character, through a personal and collective effort to better the internal affairs of our Muslim communities, to understand that what we face today is nothing compared to what the Ahlul Bayt and the Sahaba faced in their time. That no matter how society deals with us, no matter what problems and troubles we face, they are not insurmountable. They can be faced, they can be withstood, but only if we look to the commitment, to the courage, to the strength and steadfastness of the Ahlul Bayt. Only if we look to the Ahlul Bayt as a shining example of how to never lose faith and hope, no matter the circumstances. So, what is our response to these challenges? What is our response to these misconceptions and negative portrayals of Muslims in the media? What is our line of action? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, وَلَا تَسْتَوِي الْحَسَنَ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةَ ادفع بالتي هي أحسن فإذا الذي بينك وبينه عداوة كأنه ولي حميم. Allah Almighty states, good deeds and evil deeds are not equal. Refute the evil deed with one which is better, with the result that the one with whom you had rivalry or enmity becomes your most warm-hearted friend. Refute evil with goodness. This is the ultimate lesson and message that we learn from Sayyida Zainab, salamullah alayha. When Yazid wanted to destroy the very tenets of Islam, it was the family of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was the Ahlul Bayt who challenged Yazid's strength, his power and his corruption, but not by repelling evil with evil, not by fighting fire with fire, but by show of strong character, by show of strong iman, unshakable faith in Allah. It was the Ahlul Bayt who became the protectors of faith. It was the Ahlul Bayt who stood up to the tyranny. It was the Ahlul Bayt who refused to bow down in the face of immorality and corruption. It was the Ahlul Bayt who stood up for righteousness and justice. And it was the Ahlul Bayt, the blessed family of the Prophet ﷺ, who gave their lives for Islam so that we could practice it today, so that it could continue being a living deen. This is why the Holy Prophet ﷺ stated in a hadith narrated by Zayd bin Arqam radiallahu anhu, where he states that the Holy Prophet ﷺ stated, وَأَنَا تَارِكٌ فِيكُمْ ثَقَلَيْنِ, I leave with you two great valuable things. أَوَّلُهُمَا كِتَابُ اللَّهِ فِيهِ الْهُدَى وَالنُّورِ. The first of them is the Book of Allah, in which contains the light and the guidance. فَخُذُوا بِكِتَابِ اللَّهِ وَاسْتَمْسِكُوا بِهِ. Follow the Book of Allah and hold on to it firmly. فَحَثَّ عَلَى كِتَابِ اللَّهِ وَرَغَبَ فِيهِ. Therefore, the Holy Prophet ﷺ emphasized on Allah's book and commanded them to be inclined towards it. ثُمَّ قَالَ وَأَهْلُ بَيْتِي. Then the Holy Prophet ﷺ stated, the second valuable thing is my household. itrati wa ahli bayti, the children among my household. And then the Holy Prophet ﷺ stated, أذكركم الله في أهل بيتي أذكركم الله في أهل بيتي أذكركم الله في أهل بيتي. The Holy Prophet ﷺ stated, I remind you to be mindful of Allah in the matter of my household. I remind you to be mindful of Allah regarding my household. I remind you to be mindful of Allah in the matter of my household. This hadith shows us the importance of not only loving the Ahlul Bayt, but following their sunnah, following their footsteps, to have them as our role models, and to remember Allah in the matter of the blessed family of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. We must therefore respond to the challenges that we faced today with the same strength and with the same courage as the Ahlul Bayt did during Karbala. We as young Muslim women and girls have an obligation. We have a responsibility to strengthen our iman, not just for ourselves though, not just to protect our own akhirah, but to transfer that iman and strength to the generation after us. And we must remember that none of us are alone. No young woman or girl is struggling against the modern challenges of our era for the first time. This is why our history is so important. This is why the month of Muharram is so important. This is why we need to learn and appreciate the lessons of the past. Because we have the shining example of Sayyida Zainab, salamullah alayha, to remember. We have the beautiful model of the granddaughter of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam to follow, so that we may tread steadfastly on the straight path. So when we go out to seek what it means to be a Muslim in a troubling time for Islam, if we are seeking an example of strength, an example of unshakable faith, an example of bravery, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to look, to learn, to seek guidance, to find comfort in the example of the Ahlul Bayt. Syeda Zainab salamullah alayha stands as an exemplary model for both women and men on how to defend the honor of our faith in the face of rampant misrepresentation, and how to defend the values that we stand for in the face of our modern challenges. Now, coming to the life and upbringing of Syeda Zainab salamullah alayha, we know that she was trained and disciplined from a very young age to become the woman she did and to fulfill the duty that she was destined with. Syeda Zainab salamullah alayha was taught the Quran and the Sunnah directly through the example of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. It was under his divine presence that she acquired the basic tenets and morals of Islam. Under the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam's supervision, she improved her purity, she acquired her spiritual habits, and developed her ideological and intellectual understanding of her deen and her objective in life. She learnt the lesson of Tawheed and Tawakkul ala Allah in the lap of her esteemed father, Sayyidina Imam Ali karamallahu wajhul kareem. She was taught how to protect her dignity and her honor by her esteemed mother, Sayyidah Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha. And finally, she was taught how to fight, how to battle, and how to stand strong by the example of the leaders of the youth of paradise and by the prince of martyrs, Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba and Sayyidina Imam Hussein alayhi salam. You see, Sayyida Zainab salamullah alayha bore a childhood unlike any girl her age. She underwent womanhood unlike any other woman in her time, because it was her destiny. She was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's chosen warrior to defend the name of Islam, to defend the honor of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam's beloved sons, because she was chosen to bear the cost of such immense personal sacrifice. She was chosen to challenge the great forces that weakened the pillars of Islam, a woman, but a forbearing, brave, and fearless woman. And we see this strength and bravery particularly in the aftermath of the events of Karbala. Within hours of the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, Syeda Zainab salamullah alayha and Imam Hussein alayhi salam's only surviving son, Imam Zain al-Abidin, were taken as captives, first to the court of Ibn Ziyad in Kufa, and then to Yazid's palace in Damascus. And throughout her journey, we see that Sayyida Zainab salamullah alayha reflected the character and majesty of her esteemed parents. In chastity and modesty, she is likened to the leader of the women of paradise. When she was made to walk unveiled in the streets of Medina, in the streets and in the markets and in the palaces of Kufa and Damascus, Sayyida Zainab salamullah alayha did not at all bow down to accept the dishonor. Instead, she stood in the court of the tyrant and mocked Yazid's attempt to dishonor and disgrace her. Because nobody, not even a tyrant like Yazid, can come close to touching the purity and the dignity of the daughter of Sayyidah Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha. And when the time came to battle Yazid with her speech, Sayyidah Zainab salamullah alayha spoke with the same eloquence of her esteemed father, Sayyidina Imam Ali karamallahu wajhul kareem. Indeed, she was well aware of the famous hadith of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, "Afdalul jihadi kalimatu adlin 'inda sultanin ja'irin." The best form of jihad is to utter just words in the presence of a tyrant ruler. When Ibn Ziyad commanded his men to kill the last living kin of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, Sayyidah Zainab salamullah alayha showed the bravery of Imam Hussein alayhi salam when she stood to offer her life instead. Indeed, she carried the strength and forbearance of Sayyidina Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wasallam when she sat in the court of a tyrant with the severed heads of her family in front of her. So we can say that the jewel of Imam Ali karamallahu wajhul kareem, the rose of Sayyidah Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha, the companion of Sayyidina Imam Hussein, and the legacy of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam fought bravely in the face of her oppressor. From her actions, we are taught the important lesson of responsibility. The responsibility that we have to keep our Iman alive, and not just for our own sake, and not just for our own akhirah, but for the generation of Muslims after us. We witnessed this sense of responsibility in Sayyidah Zainab salamullah alayha in the court of Yazid, when she came to the defense of her niece, Sayyidah Fatima bint Hussein salamullah alayha. In the court of Yazid, a despicable request was made by one of Yazid's men to take her as a slave girl. And it was at this moment when Sayyidah Zainab salamullah alayha rose to defend the dignity of Sayyidah Fatima bint Hussein, and she evoked a powerful sermon. She began by reminding Yazid of who Sayyidah Fatima bint Hussein was, and then of what a foolish tyrant Yazid was to talk about enslaving the great-granddaughter of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, at whose hands Yazid's ancestors were granted freedom. What we learn from Sayyidah Zainab salamullah alayha is the importance of having a strong sense of obligation to protect the dignity and haya of our daughters, i.e. the next generation. But remember, we cannot even think about protecting the haya, but protecting the dignity and modesty of our coming generation until we ourselves are not stable, until we ourselves are not clear about the foundations of our religion. And remember, whilst we are young now, we have this opportunity to strengthen our roots, to strengthen our foundations in the deen, to become stern in our duty to protect our haya, to go to the appropriate lengths to adopt modesty both outwardly and inwards. Why? Because until we ourselves are not confident enough to wear the hijab today, for example, until we ourselves are not ready to accept and to submit to the commands of Allah, we will never be able to transfer this awareness, this duty and obligation to our daughters in the coming generation. So what is this responsibility that we talk about? What is this duty? What is our mission? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states in the Quran, "Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun." Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, indeed, we have sent the Quran, and indeed only we are its guardian. Now this verse speaks about the protection of the Quran, but which can also be interpreted as encompassing the deen, i.e. the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In other words, we can say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised us that until Judgment Day, the deen of Islam will remain on this earth in one shape or form. But whilst this promise remains, our iman is bound to be tested, it is bound to be challenged in every era and in every time. There will certainly always be forces that seek to weaken the pillars of Islam, that seek to weaken our iman. Regardless, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's promise will remain. Islam will truly stay alive till the end of this material world, but this great promise will not be fulfilled through the angels or from the heavens. Instead, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed this great task, this great mission, onto the shoulders of every believing man and every believing woman on this earth. So we bear this great responsibility. It has, after all, always been our purpose on this earth to seek this great mission and complete it to the best of our ability. The mission of keeping this religion alive, keeping our iman alive, has been the mission of the great prophets and the messengers that came before us. It has been the struggle and mission of the great saints before us, the great generations that have come before us. It remains our mission today, and it is further our responsibility to relay it to our next generation. So, why do we remember Karbala? Why do we remember Sayyida Zainab salamullah alayha? Why do we commemorate and remind ourselves of the message of the martyrdom? Because we are battling the same forces as they were. We are battling the same forces that still seek to chip away at our faith. We are also struggling to keep faithful whilst our religion is being torn apart, whilst policies are being put in place to make it more difficult for us to comfortably practice our faith. And it is so easy to feel alone. It is so easy to feel isolated in this battle, which is why every year, when the month of Muharram comes, we make it a point in our lives to revive this great mission that we have set out to complete. It is a time of year where we can renew our intention to continue this lifelong struggle of remaining faithful and remaining brave when we are tested and trialed. We remember Karbala because it is the strongest example we have, and it is a reminder to us that there have been many challenges to our faith in the past, and there will continue to be in the future. But these challenges have been faced and won in the past, and inshallah, if we follow the Quran and Sunnah, they can be faced and won today. Therefore, it is our duty to keep this fight going, to keep strong, to keep fighting until we are found victorious in the court of Allah Almighty on Judgment Day. Karbala is a reminder to us that we have a responsibility to our faith. We have a responsibility to our brothers and sisters around the world and to the next generation. Because if we are not willing to endure this battle today, we leave our next generation helpless. So for the brothers and sisters who find themselves in their own courts of Yazid, who find themselves living in countries where practicing their faith is strategically being made complicated and difficult, who are finding it difficult to protect and defend the values of their deen, remember the strength of Syeda Zainab salamullah alayha. Let her life, let her actions be your source of strength. Let her be your daily reminder to remain steadfast on the great mission, and let her bravery and let her actions remind you of the responsibility that we have been bestowed by the Almighty to keep the flag of this beautiful religion risen. I pray that Allah Almighty grants us the tawfiq, the ability to remain steadfast and to always remain confident and faithful in today's time. We pray for the long life and health of our Shaykh, Hazur Sayyidi Shaykh al-Islam. We pray for the success of this great mission, and we pray that we remain attached to this tahriq until our dying moments. If I've said anything of any worth, it is only the grace of Allah Almighty and through the teachings of Hazur Sayyidi Shaykh al-Islam. And if I've said anything wrong, if I have made any mistake, it is my mistake alone. So thank you again very much to the organisers of this event and to the participants who joined us today. وما علينا إلا البلاغ والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.